No, it's fine. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Right. I think everyone is in the right room. Happy Monday. I hope everyone had a good 420. So my name is Joe Devlin. I'm with the city's Office of Cannabis Policy and Enforcement. With me today, as always, is Zara and Christine. They're the ones that do all the real work. I'm just the one that stands up and looks ugly and makes bad jokes. So I'm going to run through, I think, a lot of kind of our usual talking or topics, and then, of course, take questions and answer as many that I can. Conditional use permits, they've kind of really flattened off, with the exception of the delivery only or non-storefront retail. Received probably 30 conditional use permits, maybe less than that. No, less than 30. How many CPs for delivery? Maybe like 10. But nonetheless, we're up to 209, not counting our 30 approved for storefront dispensaries. But almost 80 of those have been approved so far. Business operating permits, we've broke the 200 number, and we're beginning to issue those permits as well. So for those that don't know, we're waiting to issue your final business operating permit. What is this? Issue the business operating permit until you've received your temporary certificate of occupancy. So that means you've obtained your conditional use permit. It means you've submitted for your building plan, you've received a building permit, you've constructed your tenant improvements, preferably by a licensed contractor, and then have obtained at least your temporary certificate of occupancy. Once you've done all of those things, then you can legally do what you want to do in that building. I recognize that there is gray area in all of this, especially as it relates to our registered cultivators. For those folks, you're going to have to wait until you get that COO. For those people that are not registered, I guess I kind of said it incorrectly. We're going to be issuing your business operating permit, but you won't be allowed to operate until you get that temporary certificate of occupancy as well. So either your operation or the obtaining of your business operating permit is going to be tied to your certificate of occupancy that you obtain through the building department. So if you're a registered cultivator, that BOP is going to come absolutely last. If you're a manufacturer or non-registered cultivator, you are potentially likely to get a non-operational business permit that we will convert at the time that you obtain a temporary certificate of occupancy. Our equity program, after a lot of work and a lot of debate with the city attorneys, the draft of that RFP and the draft of the study that needed to be done to accompany that RFP is in my boss's inbox. So it is awaiting her review, and then hopefully we will be releasing that RFP in the next couple of weeks. Happy to take questions about that as well.
We're at the end of the meeting?
Yeah.
Q&A is at the end.
Council meetings, if any of you have an interest or are interested in the High Times event planned for Friday, there is a council meeting tomorrow where the council will discuss the issuance of a local authorization for that event to contain legal sales as well as on-site consumption. That meeting is at 5 o'clock. If anyone cares. Policy stuff. So the Law and Legislation Committee heard the concept of micro businesses. They directed us to come forward and develop an ordinance. We're going to be doing that this month and hopefully returning to the committee at the end of, I guess technically around end of next month for their review from there, because it will likely require land use and planning, land use changes or changes to Title 17 of our code, which is where all the land use stuff is held. It would also go to the Planning and Design Commission, which adds another kind of step in the process. And then following the Planning and Design Commission, it would appear to the council. I'm hoping for end of June. If not, I'm going to have to go into probably the end of July, because the council, I think, takes the first 2 weeks of July off. So it would be the end of July before they would hear the micro business concept. Is that going to affect this month? Next month? Next month. But bottom line, council passed an ordinance applying the $500 per plant fine for every plant over 6 in commercial property. It was a little bit of a loophole in our own code, so if you're cultivating in a commercial space, those fines would apply to you as well. So if you're cultivating at a non-registered facility, excuse me. Cool. Thank you. I believe technically this provision goes into effect in is it May 4th? Oh, in a couple of days. Goes into effect Star Wars Day. There you go. May 4th, that's right. Delivery-only dispensaries. We have almost 60, I thought we did have over 60, but 60 applicants. So if you are currently applying to be a delivery-only dispensary, I understand that there are complexities around every part of this industry, and I'm trying to do my best to make sure that, reason applies to all of this as we attempt to follow all of the state and local laws. So for delivery, I guess you should just know a couple of things. One, you need to tell us if you're operating, and that's a binary yes or no. If you are, you need to be doing a couple of things. One, you need to be adhering to all of the local laws and rules, including the state and also the state ones. So that means point of sale system, GPS in your car, no more than $3,000 of product. And then you need to be doing it out of an appropriate location. Many of you have obtained a temporary state permit. Sorry, the other thing that you need to do if you're operating, this goes for everybody, is remitting your 4% business operations tax. And there's a form that you can fill out online, business operations tax certificate, that you need to complete online. But if you're operating period, you need to remit the 4%. But if you're a delivery company, you need to be remitting the 4%. You need to be following all the state rules. And then you need to know as you go through your permitting process that at some point in time you're going to interface with the state. So you're going to go ahead and you're going to get a temporary permit, and that's going to happen pretty much instantaneously. And you're going to continue to go about doing your business, hopefully fully compliant with all of the laws. But at some point, the state is going to knock on your door of where you're doing business. And part of your annual permit application, they're going to come in and inspect what your premise looks like. If you don't have a compliant premise, it's going to be problematic for your annual permit, and then you're going to run into problems with us and them. So I know that the delivery, sector is, every sector is unique, but maybe presents some unique challenges. But that's the facts. I'm not here to provide business advice. If you're operating a delivery company, you need to be following the laws. You need to be using a point of sale system, GPS, commercial vehicles. They all need to be insured. You need to be doing it at an appropriate location. And at some point, you go through your annual permit review. If you're not operating out of a compliant premise, it's going to be problematic, and it's going to be problematic very quickly. So, again, if you're a delivering company, you need to tell us if you're operating or not. And I understand that some of you need to kind of go back and kind of really think about how and what you're doing. And that would be my advice. Go back and think about how and what you're doing and how you can be legally compliant. That's the goal. Temporary state licenses, we're going to continue to work very closely with the state, but we're also working with our own building department. And many of you have started to submit for your building permit. Many of you have not. If you think you don't need a building permit, you're most likely wrong. If you have done interior improvements, if you built out an office, added a bathroom, I don't know, hung a bunch of lights, brought in some extraction equipment, you need a permit. installed a roll-up door. Even if you've already done this work, you still need a permit. And it will hold you up, and it will hold you up with us, it will hold you up with the state eventually, and it'll potentially becomes very problematic. So again, even if you already have unpermitted work, there's a process of permitting it. You need to submit plans that include what has been done. Preferably those plans are done by a licensed design professional or engineer and or architect. It makes it easier on your end, and it also makes it easier on our end. But you need an approved building permit in order to obtain your certificate of occupancy. But when in doubt, you can always ask. But you probably need a building permit. So, again, please submit those. Like, I can't, if you have an application in with our office and you are currently a manufacturer, and I know we don't have a registry for manufacturers. I know that we have had manufacturing operating in the city for a number of years. Submit your building permit. Please, everybody submit your building permit. The bottom line is, at some point, we're going to start denying applications to people that can't move forward and become legally compliant. And part of becoming legally compliant is getting your building permit and your certificate of occupancy and doing all that. So at some point, you know, that big red, you know, denied stamp that I don't own yet is going to be used on someone's application. Nobody wants to talk about this, right? I can skip this one.
Can you do a quick summary?
Yeah. Quick. The policy committee is going to be hearing an ordinance on next Tuesday, which would put a cap on the total amount of square footage for cultivation within the Power In Alliance area at 2.5 million square feet. We have currently about 2.8 million square feet in applications. Depending on how you calculate it, how you calculate cultivation, that number might be a little bit closer to 3 million square feet. And that's about all I can tell you. I'd like to finish getting through this, but I'll do this one. Nobody was necessarily pushed into that. So the Power In Alliance the city has two general areas where we have a concentration of manufacturing and industrial property just in the city. So if you just did a heat map of industrial, light manufacturing property in the city, it's going to show up in predominantly two parts of the city. One down in the south in Council District 6 along the Power In Alliance area, and one up in the north in Council District 2. That's just been how we grew up as a city and where that property was developed. Our zoning requirements, which didn't limit that property cultivation to those particular properties. Well, it wasn't limited. It was already concentrated, and so the available property was already concentrated in those two areas.
Questions are at the end?
So,
Wait and hold on. Thank you.
So again, if you have questions or comments or concerns, that meeting is going to take place at the Law and Ledge Committee. Starts at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock? 3 o'clock, May 8th. Committee members are Councilor Guerra, Harris, Chenier, and Hansen. May 8th, Tuesday. Tuesday, May 8th. We're making changes to our distribution ordinance again, not just because it's fun, but because we didn't really get it right the first time. So we're going to get closer to matching the state, but we're going to be a little bit different. So we're actually going to keep self-distribution. So the state's self-distribution is self-transportation. Right? So we're actually going to keep self-distribution. So if you are a permit holder of a cultivation facility or manufacturing facility and want to expand and do distribution, but only for your own products, you can apply for that and still have all those administrative privileges of distribution. We're also going to be removing the square footage cap, which is really the big one because it's arbitrary, and then tiering our distribution center permits based on gross receipts. We're also going to be adding a transport-only license, but we're not doing what the state is doing, having a self-transport-only license and a regular transport-only license. It's just going to be a transport-only license. I'm not really sure of the value of a self-transport-only license. It's like a $500 difference, and that's it. And we will post this on our website. Hold on, here you go. Pass them around. All right. Normally fashion. You can tell I didn't write that. All right. I got through a lot of material in 30 minutes, but that's all I got. All right. Hearing and seeing no questions, thank you all very much.
Okay, and if everybody can wait until you get the microphone and then it will get picked up on the recording, it'd be greatly appreciated.
Hey Joe, Rob Branch, PRB Commercial. I'm not sure you can answer this question. We have been in touch with building. We have about 11,000 square foot building that we want to lease. The front part delivery, non-retail. The back either cultivation or manufacturing. The problem is there's two buildings, the main building and a little small 2,000 square foot building. We've been told that we can't do delivery non-retail in the back because it doesn't have a bathroom. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I don't. Let me have to think about that one. I mean, you need your own premise. I mean, if you want to like install a bathroom on the outside of the other building that is not part of the other building's premise, you might be able to get away with that, but you really got to talk to building, or put in a bathroom. I mean,
Yeah. Okay. My other question was about District 6, my favorite, which I've seen you at the meetings. At the February, I believe it was 13th meeting, Councilman Hanson asked Joy to come back with the exact figures. Have you seen these figures? Because she's never, as far as I know, reported what the actual numbers are that are cultivation, manufacturing, and the total amount of space in that area.
what's been applied for? Yeah, we've been working with Joy to calculate that number, and yeah, show up Tuesday. It depends on how you calculate it, to be honest. So there's a couple different ways, but it's roughly 2.8 million square feet of what has been applied for of cultivation within the Power in Alliance area.
So on the February meeting, when she said 100,000 square feet of it was probably manufacturing, that's all been gobbled up and gone now?
gobbled up. No, I mean,
Well, other applications
we-
additional.
we've gone through all the applications and calculated the premise. And so how you match premise with building is a part of the discussion that the policy committee is going to have. But in terms of premise, there's approximately 2.8 and some change million square feet of applied conditional use permit for cultivation.
Okay. Have other questions, but I'll let other people speak.
Hi, Joe. Daniel here. The proposed cultivation square footage cap and the Power In Alliance, do you know if that will also include micro-business cultivation? That micro that includes cultivation, or just cultivation CUPs?
That's part of, I think, that's a really good question for the policy committee, and it's part of like the calculation question that I was getting at. So it's certainly possible. I believe that there are opinions out there that that it should be. Right, okay. So if your whole micro business was 10,000 square feet, that whole 10,000 square feet should be applied to the $2.5 million or 2.5 million square foot cultivation cap.
Even though the micros are just being rolled out, that's not going to be exemption or consideration?
That's really for the policy committee to wrestle with, and those are the types of questions that people like yourself, if you're free, should come and ask.
They'll be going over that on May the 8th?
May 8th,
May 8th.
3 o'clock.
Hi, Joe. My name is Jackie Ray Camp, MBA. I have a couple questions. The agenda, help me understand, is this agenda really for the regulations for Prop 64 for recreational use? Is this what this agenda is right now that we're seeing?
Yes.
Okay, so that
I mean, maybe technically more specific to SB 94 and a whole bunch of set of regs that the various departments have put out, but.
Okay, so that brings me to my next question. When and where are we going to start addressing patients' rights under Assembly Bill or State Bill 420, Prop 215? Those who are partaking in cannabis use for a number of medical reasons. As a patient and as a member of a wonderful collaborative, I'm not understanding where my taxpayer dollars are going to harassing us in a session of communal, collaborative, nonviolent, community-oriented cleaning up our communities that we are partaking in. And now it's being conglomerated into Prop 64 and commercial and corporation and taxes. Do you see where there's a line that's not being defined here?
Well, I think I understood, and I think the sentiment of your question, I would argue that there is a line that has been delineated. However, the particulars or the potential issues with state law, you're geographically close to the right building, but you're like about 4 blocks off. It's the big white domed building about 4 blocks from here. That's where we need to really take kind of the issues around, the interface between SB 420, Prop 215, SB 94, Prop 64, and all of that.
Yeah,
doesn't really state. It's really for the legislature.
But as far as that goes, you are the forefront, being the community and the department. I don't know your legal title around here, but you guys are supposed to be representing and assisting our communities in adapting to Prop 64. However, nothing is being addressed for the fact of us being in compliance with previous state bill and Prop 215. There's a huge difference. However, what I have a problem with as well is that I can go to a nightclub and go have and be in beer and ingesting cannabis, and there's no issues, which I see a big problem with that when just walking distance is this park that we're being referred to as being what's the words that they want to use us as? Defiance, hooligans, however you want to label us as medical patients. That's where our state resources are not being allocated correctly. And for it to be assumed into this bill, and you being the representative for this community and committee, where does the line start where we start really focusing on commercial? High Times, for example, gets to come and make really great money at Cal Expo. But our collaborations, we're not there for profits. We're not there for any gain, except for to help each other as medical patients.
Yeah. So Proposition 64, right, is technically a constitutional amendment, right? So probably, I'm guessing, of the people that voted, you guys all voted yes for that. But it was technically a state constitution, so that superseded all of SB 94 or SB 420, and it superseded all of Proposition 215. I mean, it was written with 215 in mind, and so what we have is a new set of laws, which are in fact constitutional amendments. So there's a framework of within Prop 64 that the departments at the CDTFA and BCC and CDFA and CDPH are all operating from within. And there is a process for legal and operational compliance. And there is even an acknowledgement of Prop 215 and a phase-in period, but the law is pretty clear right now. I didn't write Prop 64. No.
Hey, Joe. Chris Cohen from Total Leaf. The California Department of Public Health released S-type license roughly a month ago. I want to see where the city is at on it and when facilities can start registering as shared use facilities and when you might be able to take S-type license applications.
Yeah, so I was really happy that they did that. I'd been pushing them to do that for a long time, actually. So I think how we're going to address it, we're not going to create a separate manufacturing type S license, but if you get the license that gives you full administrative privileges, and then what we would want in there is just kind of an application with your, that either can include your fellow licensees or a description of how it's going to operate, but you could apply now for that.
All right, I did apply with the Department of Public Health to register my facility as shared use, and it stopped at your office. There might be some confusion. I'll talk to you guys after. Okay.
Hey, Joe, my name is Joe Debs. In your earlier comments, you mentioned that one of your codes didn't comply. I think you were talking about Title 17, and you discovered that one of your codes didn't comply, and I think you said you straightened it out. But my question is, do you anticipate any further clashes with state laws, because there are so many? You have yours and they have theirs. So do you anticipate any further misgivings until this thing fleshes out with the state codes?
Well, so where we have conflict with state law, we are superseded, right? So absolutely, we're superseded. So I think where there is, vagueness and ambiguity, we're going to continue to kind of, work through it. Yeah, this is all going to be a process. This is all going to be really clear how to do it once we've collectively all done it. Until then, it's
expect to get a heads up before the fact rather than after the fact.
On what issue?
In other words,
pick one.
As soon as you find out, can we know? Hopefully, no one will fall in the trap of being denied simply because they didn't know.
Yeah,
that this was coming down the road.
That's not going to happen. My one of my goals in all of this has, been to get people to comply with state and local law, right? To help them comply with state and local law. So that remains one of my goals. But if you don't apply for a building permit, it's going to be problematic.
Hello.
Thank you.
My name is Dr. Deborah Kleisley, and I work at 420 Med Evaluations on 21st Street, and I'm here to stand up for my patients. With all these fees and rules and licenses and taxes, it's gotten totally out of their price range. I see veterans, disabled people who cannot work and make the money to pay for all this stuff, and they need the medicine. It really is medicine. So please help us. Hashtag patients before profits.
Try and worry. We've sent a letter of support to the, I can't remember the bill number, but it's the Lackey bill that would lower the excise tax and forego the cultivation tax for a period of time. So the city sent a letter of support on that issue. It's absolutely real.
They need somewhere where they can medicate and get their medicines for reasonable prices. And those are the private shows. And I want to support those.
Hi. I have two specific questions, actually, pertaining to Power and Alliance. Is the cap, hypothetical cap, going to affect manufacturers, number one? And number two, if we have a blanket CUP over a building that's cultivation and it hasn't been approved yet, and it could be, it's in the Power and Alliance area, if we want to put in a manufacturing there instead of cultivation being subject to the cap, do we have to amend the conditional use permit? Do we have to file another one? Or do we simply go in with the business operating permit and show that on the floor plans?
So you managed to sneak in like 5 questions into that. Let's see if I can, in reverse order. So if you obtained a conditional use permit and it included 100,000 square feet of the proverbial building of cultivation, you are allowed under that production CUP to do manufacturing. You can go in and do manufacturing in that. I have to check with the zone administrator, but you can do manufacturing in there without losing, quote unquote, your entitlement of 100,000 square feet of cultivation. Right? So you can go in there and apply. Will it impact manufacturing? Maybe. And again, it depends on how the final calculation of cultivation is done. If we use the state definition of premise and what you're approved for in your CUP, say if it's a 100,000 square foot building and you're going to do 50,000 square feet of cultivation, 50,000 square feet of manufacturing. If we use by declared cultivation, we get to a certain number. If the policy committee wants us to use that entire building, basically if there's 10 square feet of cannabis cultivation taking place in the building, we count the whole building. We get a different number. So it may impact manufacturing, right? So if you could always potentially go in and your CUP that included both could potentially be denied because we hit the cap. If you applied just for manufacturing under it currently as it's written, manufacturing as a standalone use within the building would not be impacted. I think I thoroughly confused you. We can talk afterwards. Yeah.
Hi, I'm a local attorney that deals with compliance, and I actually have this exact issue going on right now. We already submitted we have a cultivation CUP was approved on the building, the premise, but we had to go in later and we did a separate manufacturing CUP. And right now, we have the CUP and the business application submitted for the manufacturing, but there's a hold on our hearing for the CUP. And I think they said it had to do with this whole Power and Alliance business.
You're right.
But we're not.
Were you already
sure.
scheduled for a hearing?
Not even on schedule.
Okay.
They just said they're not scheduling anything in that area, but we're not sure why that's impacting our simply manufacturing CUP rather than we're not doing cultivation at all.
Yeah, I don't want to speak on behalf of the planning department, but I think everything kind of had the pause button pushed on it. But they're going to start scheduling hearings here pretty soon. So if they don't start this week, I expect them to start certainly next week.
Hey, Joe, Courtney. Thank you to your team for your time. You guys have been so awesome so far. Appreciate it. I have a question. I just wanted to clarify. District 6 BOPs capped at 1.5 million square feet for cultivation. Correct? No?
No.
No. It's 2.5 for CUPs. Is there a cap on BOP square footage as well?
Well, there would be a cap on cultivation eventually, right? I mean, we would hit it by some indirectly, right? So it is theoretical that we could have 2.5 million square feet of approved cannabis cultivation for land use entitlement purposes. And less than 2.5 million square feet of actual cannabis cultivation through the business permit. But I would be limited from issuing permits that extended beyond that 2.5 million square feet of approved area, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I just had heard somewhere in the rumor mill that it was 2.5 for CUP and 1.5 for BOP.
Yeah,
okay.
but common sense says that doesn't make any sense, right? So,
Yeah. Well, yeah, it wouldn't make sense that 1.5 you'd even allow 2.5. Okay. The other question is, are you getting any pressures?
I'm not that mean. Come on.
Are you getting any pressure to cap other license types, such as delivery, manufacturing, and distribution in District 6 or any other district?
No. What we are looking at and have done is moving forward with the Del Paso Del Paso Boulevard restrictions for Del Paso and Arden. Really, that was at the request of Councilmember Warren, who wanted to encourage storefront activity. And so he already has vacant, buildings basically on Del Paso and Arden, and doesn't want them to be, operational but not active. Also as part of the undue concentration definition, there'll be not a hard requirement, because the zoning administrator could find reasons to have them closer, but a distance of 600 feet between other production applicants outside of the Power and Alliance area. So the definition of undue concentration would be 2.5 million square feet of cultivation within the Power and Alliance area, and 600 feet between other production uses outside of the IA area.
I guess also with undue concentration, it's an umbrella term, and we're at this juncture where we're defining undue concentration for cultivation. But to help you out and to help me out, would it be a good thought process to assume that undue concentration might be defined at some point for other permit types besides cultivation, or?
I think dispensaries is probably, if that conversation goes anywhere, dispensaries, retail outlets would be the next, I think, conversation. Yeah, so I think if you kind of look back at local government's experience with like liquor stores, right? I'm not comparing dispensaries to liquor stores, but I guess I will. We and the state, local governments and the state, finally came around and said, okay, there's a balance that we want to kind of strike here, right? So I don't want to walk into, fill in the blank neighborhood. I'll tell you the neighborhood that I grew up in had a lot of liquor stores in it, right? And maybe those liquor stores aren't so good overall. And so the state already has a definition of undue concentration for retail, but it's potentially problematic because it talks about kind of balance between the city and county, and we don't have a balance between the city and county because the county doesn't have any. So we may have to look at that and decide, is there an issue with having 4 dispensaries in a 2-block area? I don't know. I mean, a couple of them have relocated. One's in the process of relocating. I don't know if their CUP was approved. I think so. But I think it's possible that some others want to be in the downtown and midtown area, and that might be okay up to a certain point. But I think if all 30 dispensaries wanted to locate in downtown or midtown, I think the residents of midtown would be like, okay, I've had enough. Like, all right, 1 or 2 is fine, 3 or 4 is cool, right? But why do we have 8 or 12? I don't know.
All right, so this question has to do with the Arden area. We recently submitted our CUP, BOP, all by the deadline. Had to cross a lot of T's, dot a lot of I's, but we made it happen. So now we're being told that there's an ordinance being proposed regarding the light rail station that's near there. Something to do with employee count or something like that. I haven't got the exacts on that.
Yeah, let's have a follow-up after.
Follow-up after?
Does anybody else have the light rail question? All right, let's talk after.
I'm right here. My question is in regards to the events. We've talked before about the events, and it seemed like you said we're a little bit ahead, but are you saying basically that there's no movement? Because like High Times, they got, Cal Expo, but if somebody else goes in, there's supposed to be no monopoly, but when High Times just kind of came in and had an event, what about other people that want to have events there, but Cal Expo has basically monopolized it to High Times? And it's like, couldn't we do even smaller events like these sessions? Because you're well aware of the sessions. Can't we do, say, work out something with Cal Expo? Is there any movement? I think that's what a lot of the people in here want to know. Are these events going to survive? They're helping people.
Yeah. So per state law, Prop 64 and the SB 94, which merged the adult use and medical worlds, on-site consumption can take place in one of 2 places: a licensed dispensary, or technically a county fair or agricultural event, which the state is, because it's poorly worded, which the state is interpreting by its legislative intent to mean county fairgrounds. In Sacramento, our county fairgrounds is Cal Expo, which is a state piece of property with its own board of directors, its own president, CEO. It's a piece of property where we traditionally have 0 control over. But those are the 2 places that on-site consumption events can take place. I don't think that Cal Expo has signed an exclusivity agreement with High Times. I think they have planned 1 event with them. But again, those are the 2 places where on-site consumption can take place.
I'm an organizer. I've reached out to them, and I don't get a response. And so that's kind of where I'm at with, I want to go forward, but how do we go forward if basically it's monopolized to High Times because that's already a name? I don't, that's kind of where I'm at. Is there any movement that we can start getting some of these shows maybe at Cal Expo, or even a non-consumption, even to where, even if it's a smaller sesh where there's no consumption, just some kind of movement, some type of talk, something to get it going.
Yeah, I'm happy to help facilitate a conversation with Cal Expo. But you also need the state temporary event permit, license.
Well, we're still going to have to, even as event organizers, we're still going to have to tackle the other things like how it's distributed, how the products are. I mean, there's also other things, but just getting to where we can have it, can we just to get the permit and get it going, that's where I'm kind of at, because it's like out of nowhere, High Times, I would have loved to did an event there if someone would return the call to where it clearly says not to be monopolized. So everyone should be able to, if they have the proper permits, the business plan, the whole thing, traffic, everything, then they should be able to do it.
I'm happy to help.
That's kind of where I'm at with it.
I'm happy to try and help facilitate a conversation with Cal Expo.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Joe. My name's Timothy Butler. I'm kind of stuck on everything here because I come from a different ideology of thinking on this. I've been a cannabis user since I was 15 years old, okay? It saved me from Ritalin and all the psychotic drugs they wanted to put me on as a very young man. It's a sacrament to me. It's not what it is to many others in this room is a way of making money. This is a true sacrament to me. And I wonder where I stand in running like a 30-person ministry, that I am creating a cannabis for my people in my ministry. I don't charge them for what I do. What I do comes from the heart, comes from who I am, okay? I'm not doing what others are doing here. And I want to know where I stand in that as my religious sacrament, it coming from the Bible, it being removed from the Bible in 1910, early 1900s. And I need to know where I stand as a human being, and that being my religious sacrament into my leeway to having a relationship with the Creator, okay? The Creator that created every single person in this building, okay? And like I said, I do not come from an ideology of thinkers that think about a way to make money off of a plant that God created for me and my family.
Yeah. Can we get your question, please?
My question is, where do we stand, as I said, okay, as a people, as me as a person, and a person that runs a very small ministry that isn't into making money in what I do? That's where I stand. Where are my rights as a human being? I'm not into making money out of what I do, but where do I stand?
Well, you may need a constitutional attorney, maybe a theologian, but per state law, you're allowed to cultivate up to 6 plants, and you can have personal possession up to, 1 ounce of cannabis, 8 grams of concentrate. As for like the church, if you want to start a church, I have no idea how to start a church. I just know that you need a use permit if you want to have one. So that same CUP process. Yeah, you still need a use permit.
Run a home ministry up to 8 people in my home, out of my home at any time. I know my Religious Rights Act. I know that it is actually classified as a food with our government, and we have a Religious Food Act. We have a Religious Right Act that is in process. And so when we get down to it, that our government has patented this as a food and as an antioxidant, so it is actually classified as a food, and therefore I have my right in the Religious Freedoms Act to my food. So therefore, I believe
technically though, the state of California, the Department of Public Health and CDFA have, if you didn't know, it's actually not a food. So if you're manufacturing cannabis, even if it's the proverbial brownie and it's intended to be an edible, technically, under the Department of Public Health, you're not making food. Just FYI. But yeah.
As far as the delivery-only dispensaries, you said there would be like problems.
Can you whisper the first part of the question again?
As far as the delivery-only dispensaries, you were saying that there would be problems. Could you like elaborate? Is there like a fine? Do you know what that fine would be? Is there
I think Well, if you can't comply and you run into premise problems with the state, it's going to make it very difficult for me to approve a business operating permit. There's the problem.
Is there a fine associated with this? Is it just frowned upon?
My big red deny stamp that I don't own yet. Put that on the list. Yeah, I mean, again, I want the delivery companies to become and be compliant. It's just a challenge, I think, maybe more unique to this industry than others, because unlike cultivation that was commercial at scale, any of these delivery companies, I'll just say, potentially weren't operating out of commercial buildings prior to their application. I don't want to necessarily know where they're operating out of, but it just wasn't maybe at their application. And so there's going to be a premise problem that is going to be coming with the expiration of a temporary permit and obtaining a state annual license that is going to require an on-site inspection by the Bureau. So
I was just curious.
that's the moment of the problem.
Hey, Joe. Name's William Hennessy. We've had a meeting before in your office concerning the sesh that I host and have here in Sacramento. You told everybody here today that Prop 215 and SB 420 still exist, and we have till, what was it, January 9th, 2019 to get compliant. So as a cooperative and collective in Sacramento that's under Prop 215 SB 420, I still currently have the right to facilitate all the needs of my current members? And do I still have the right to consume anywhere I can as a Prop 215 patient until next year?
Yeah. So, while not an attorney, I do play one on TV, but that is my limitation. So, Proposition 215 exists insofar as Proposition 64 provided a timeline or phase out of it. The collective cooperatives that operate within the city legally are licensed. We have 30 of them. So we have 30 permitted collective cooperative not-for-profits under Prop 215. That's what we had beginning back in really 2000, probably 8, and licensed in 2012. I don't have any more of those permits to issue. The council has put a cap of 30. So I don't have any more to issue. As it relates to personal consumption, personal consumption is permitted, but there are limitations on it.
Hey, so I have a two-part question about edible manufacturing. According to the website and everything, it states that small manufacturers don't apply to the buffer zone.
You don't need a conditional use permit. If you're a small manufacturer with gross receipts of less than $100,000, what we do is we do a zoning check, right? So you submit your application, say, hey, here's where I want to do it. We send that address off to our planning department, and they come back and say, yes, this property is adequately zoned for this use.
Okay. So regardless of how big or small, it's still got to go through the acceptance process, I guess. So the buffer zone.
Well, one's a review, and one is a $30,000 conditional use permit that requires a public hearing. I mean, they really are apples and oranges.
Right, but I'm speaking more as far as from parks, schools, right? The 600 feet buffer zone, as they call it. It states on the website that it doesn't apply to small manufacturers. But I'm wondering if
for the CUP, what was it?
Mine is, yeah.
Just go ahead and push the button.
To a full CUP process, but you still have to go through a zoning investigation, and you still have to be outside of those buffer
Sensitive
zones.
uses.
Yeah, the sensitive uses. So regardless of the process, even if it's a full CUP or a zoning investigation, you still cannot do it within the 600 feet of those locations.
Okay.
You
Second
can't-
part.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
You just can't, I think the short answer is you can't put your manufacturing next to a school, right?
Right. I'm just curious because it does state that it doesn't apply to small manufacturers. Second part of my question is, you kind of just said that cannabis isn't classified as a food, right? But on the BCC website, it sounds like the kitchens still have to be commercial style regulated kitchens, just like a normal kitchen would be.
Yep.
but a medical manufacturer can make edibles out of his house.
No one can make anything out of their house legally. I mean, no,
Well,
it's not classified as a food for. Well, I don't want to speak on behalf of the Department of Public Health, but I think there are certainly some administrative items in there. But no, it absolutely needs to be done out of a commercial grade kitchen. It needs to be done in a commercial location. Yeah, I mean, there's going to be strict scrutiny applied, but I think for administrative purposes, I think they classify it as technically not food, so they can contain it administratively within the cannabis division of the Department of Public Health versus the other parts of the public health that inspect restaurants. But that's speculative on my part.
Over here, Joe. Hey, so, as you know, we're trying to open up a lounge in Midtown. You stated that there's only two places to consume. That's a fairgrounds and delivery, right?
Dispensary.
Dispensary. So, what about my private residence? Can I get all these people to come smoke with me at my house? We have all these. We have hundreds of bars around Sacramento, but we don't have one spot to consume. And personally, I have 6 kids myself, and I do not want to consume at my house and see my kids and me ingesting, however anybody consumes. So here's where I'm stating: it's like, where can I consume as a patient besides not my house and not a fairground? Can I walk on down the street and spark up down to the park and walk back as long as no one's, I'm not blowing in anybody's face?
Yeah.
I mean, what's the deal?
The short answer is no, and we need to have that conversation, right? This is part of the conversation that the council does need to have, and one that I will absolutely be bringing forward. But no, you've hit on a very good point of like, where does one do this now that it's legal?
You basically, 215 decriminalized where we could do anything. Now you're criminalizing it with Prop 64. Basically, I can't even smoke anywhere except my residence, and I don't want my kids. I want my kids to make their own decision later on in life and not see me what I have to do because of my past, I'd rather have them make their own decisions and ingest somewhere privately where there's people like me who don't want to ingest in their house. And I don't grow, I don't manufacture, I just consume.
Yeah.
That's it. And why did we make Prop 64 instead of decriminalizing marijuana?
Yeah, I completely agree.
Hey, Joe. On your first page, you put up that there was 209 received CUP applications. Were the last 30 or so for delivery non-retail? Is that why that number?
It wasn't 30.
jumped so-
It was, but the last kind of like bump that we got in was the non-storefront delivery. Yeah.
Okay.
It wasn't 30 though.
Of this, you had 79 approved. How many have been rejected?
One. Yeah.
And I
One.
noticed there was at least 3 that are appealed. Okay, on the topic of undue concentration, you said you're now or you suggested that they are going to change it to where it has to be 600 feet from like if you're going to do cultivation, it now has to be 600 feet away from another cultivator?
Outside of the Power and Alliance area. So in the Power and Alliance area, there would be a definition of undue concentration of 2.5 million square feet of cultivation.
Right.
Outside of the Power and Alliance area, i.e. the rest of the city, it would be a distance requirement of 600 feet between production uses. And that's not a hard and fast distance requirement. The current proposed language would allow the zoning administrator to exercise some amount of judgment or reasonableness within that.
Okay, when I was talking before the law and legislation, I was trying to explain to them that there's really only one other area that kind of meets all the criteria for what you're doing, and there's nothing really for sale there. I think what everybody's figuring out is like what I said a year ago, space is going to be the number one problem. So if you want to have an event, you have to deal with bathrooms, parking, everything else under the sun. That's why Cal Expo is obviously obvious choice, but then you have to deal with the state. If you're going to do delivery, now you want them to be compliant, but there are only so many owners that want to lease out to that kind of business. So, as you know, I've got a few clients in this. Now they're changing it again. So are you saying if 2 properties on the street have cultivation and I'm applying for a cultivation CUP and that's rejected, then can I switch it to manufacturing with delivery non-retail?
I think for the purposes of the Power and Alliance, it's intended to exclude standalone non-cultivation. I believe as it's drafted right now, it'd be other production uses. So for the 600 feet, production would apply. Again, there's a provision that would allow the zone administrator to exercise some amount of judgment and discretion and evaluation on a case-by-case basis. But yes, it would be problematic for the manufacturer.
On each case, do they ask you your opinion?
No, I stay out of it.
Thank you.
Anthony, it sounds like a lot of the stuff is not really being answered. Everything is really going in circles. Like you have the same answers mostly for everything. And so you know how he talks about ministry. Well, we're not a ministry, you know what I'm saying? We're a big community. You know what I'm saying? As a community, where do we stand, you know what I'm saying, is as far as everything is being able to consume, you know what I'm saying? You know, you say is that is if parking is a problem and as trash being a problem, if everything is controlled as a community, will everything be able to change then? And when is stuff going to be able to change? You know what I'm saying? You know, he talks about not being able to, he's not making no money up off of this stuff. Well, there's a lot of people that is their job. So that's how they're taking care of their family. So, you know, he got 6 kids as well as here. So people is taking care of their families is buying houses as well up off of that stuff. You know what I'm saying? So you can't just say as a ministry or whatever, but you know what I'm saying, that's taking a toll as you're talking about something totally different, you know what I'm saying, in a different subject. We're talking about is changing the community as far as consuming, having events not being able to ransack, you know what I'm saying, through by police. We're not comfortable, and we want to be comfortable where we're consuming, and we want our children to be comfortable. You know what I'm saying? When can we be comfortable?
I hear you, and you need a change in state law, just to be honest about it. You need a change in state law, otherwise one's personal home, right? But that in terms of like on-site consumption on a commercial property, vending through some other means other than a licensed dispensary, Those all require changes in state law. Consumption outside of a dispensary or outside of Cal Expo requires a change in state law. Like a farmer's market where cultivators are selling directly to the public, again, requires a change in state law.
Hi, Jeff. Brenda Davis here, and you mentioned earlier that you have a draft RFP and a draft equity study. Could you talk about the equity study? What is it supposed to do, and what is it going to, how is it going to relate to the RFP?
So, if you recall, we were getting close or nearing finishing I'll just say a draft of an RFP when, not to throw my attorneys under the bus, but my attorney kind of yanked my chain and said, hey, slow your roll on this. We need to do a study to basically evaluate, what we're doing and whom we're trying to help. So we have gone through that and looked at data available, and within the city of Sacramento, that data that was available was arrest data. And it shows a couple of things. One, that certain zip codes had disproportionate amounts of arrests. And once you kind of take into consideration statistical outliers such as downtown, 95814, which has little to no population but had a high number of cannabis arrests, you're left with really certain zip codes certain neighborhoods that had disproportionately high arrests. Shocking that to learn that maybe it was Del Paso Heights and Oak Park and Meadowview and Valley High, as well as Fruit Ridge area, 95824, and a couple other zip codes I can't remember. It also showed that certain persons were disproportionately arrested. So African Americans make up 15% of the population in Sacramento and made up 44% of the arrests for cannabis-related crimes. So I think that's kind of like the broad strokes of what it of what the data revealed. So that is now under legal review, and hopefully we'll be releasing both very quickly.
Okay, so the RFP is doing what? I don't think a lot of people know what the RFP is for.
Sure. It is in concept, or at least it's in its draft form, a request for a small business support center where someone who is in the cannabis industry or wants to be in the cannabis industry can go and get support completing their business plan, get help with record expungement, get help finding industry partners and or mentors, get help figuring out if they want to be an S Corp or a C Corp or a B Corp or an LLC. So help with kind of all of the supports and services that they would need in order to make that business hopefully successful and transition into the legal marketplace. The city has committed $1 million over 2 years for the operation of this program. In addition, we're going to be either doing fee waivers for our permits and or fee deferrals. So we're going to hopefully try this as what I believe will be a successful pilot that will ultimately continue. But the goal being to help those folks that were impacted by the criminalization of cannabis transition into the legal marketplace.
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions. On the event license that the state is going to be permitting for it's for event planning. They're going to be allowing you to do license unlimited, or you can do it per event. Are you guys going to support that and allow us to do these planning events in private places in Sacramento?
You can plan them at Cal Expo or Cal Expo.
So having that, it's useless for us to get that planning permit to be able to do events here because you're only going to allow it on fairgrounds.
No, that's state law. So state law, which is, again, you can go back and read it, and it actually says county fairs or agricultural events.
Also for the planning event that they're developing, it includes that.
For the planning event?
Because they're going to be doing planning event licensing to allow you to
Yeah.
do individual events that
Right.
you plan.
But those events can only take place at county fairgrounds. So there's 58 county fairgrounds up and down the state.
So basically, anybody in Sacramento shouldn't get that license because Cal Expo is limiting who they want in, and they're discriminating against who they want to let in and who they don't, which is very unfair that there's only one place in Sacramento that we can do this, and they have jurisdiction, and there's nobody to tell them that they have to be fair about it. Like, who's going to tell Cal Expo that this is all that they have and that they have to be fair? Who's going to create that window of fairness?
Well, I don't know who else is other than the current applicant, who has approached Cal Expo. Again, I'm happy to try and facilitate that conversation with Cal Expo, but they are an independent board of gubernatorial appointees. It's state-owned property. We're in a bit of an odd spot, until state law changes, and there's a bill that's been introduced. I don't know if it's made out of committee yet, but there's a bill that has been introduced that would enable or allow local jurisdictions to hold these events in other places other than county fairgrounds.
Okay, my next question is on all the applicants who have submitted for the delivery only. You want us to abide by local laws because we haven't, been seen yet or had a hearing. What about advertising? Because I know some of the same people that submitted their applications on the same day as me that have not had a hearing. I see them advertising, but we're reluctant to advertise. So what is the local laws on us not yet having our CUP or our BOP and us wanting to advertise?
Well, no one has their BOP.
Right.
Period.
I know. But I'm just saying, in the process of us waiting and our stuff is submitted and we're abiding by law, we paid our fees, can we advertise publicly, locally?
I will answer it this way. If you can't advertise without a temporary state permit.
Okay.
Kay Watson, Cobalt Bank Commercial Property. Can the property be near a railroad, light rail? How far does it have to be? Is there a rule on that? As far as the property, is there any rules that it cannot be close to light rail, or is there any rules?
Yeah, I wish planning was here, but as I understand the land use principle behind it, they're doing an evaluation of every property located within a quarter mile of a light rail stop, right? And that is under the theory of encouraging transit and transit-related uses. And so they're really looking for, potential conflicts with that land use theory. I don't believe it's a hard and fast rule of no, but those are the types of things that I believe, are kind of screening for.
Hi, my name is Tony Moreland, and I'm a patient. I'm a patient. I go to SESH every week, every 2 weeks, so I can get my meds. And not talking about the elephant in the room is really, really, really difficult for me right now. I know it's city council, everything's supposed to deal with that, but I need you as the end result to tell me how I'm going to change how they're all doing business with me. Okay, I can't afford to go to dispensary every day, especially considering the fact that I work in the Bay, I commute up here to Sacramento, and back every single day. I live here. This is where I'm spending my Bay hard-earned money, is with these vendors at SESH, because that $60 that I'm paying down there is $20 up here, and I can afford that. So when you guys have no clear answers, it scares me. I moved here from the East Coast, the Southeast, because I'm a cannabis advocate for my son who has a brain aneurysm. You stopped me from being a criminal over there. Now you're making it really taboo just to be a patient with fibromyalgia, anxiety, PTSD, and a whole other gambit full of things. It's because of the SESH. It's because I found a particular lady and some medicine that she makes that I am able to even work my 60-hour week and live a regular, normal life that has some quality and go to these sessions. I really, really would like you to tell me, as the end result, what am I supposed to do to make this happen for all of us? Where do I start?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm not trying to punt this. I think the issues that you raise are very legitimate and are absolutely worthy of a very public and thoughtful debate. So I think you can start in a couple places. One, I think you should start with your council member. Caveat to that is, however, the place that you really need to start is with the legislature. And you can ask that your council member and that the city support legislation that makes those necessary changes, that makes it easier for patients to obtain medical cannabis. But yeah, we ultimately really need changes in state laws around how dispensaries can operate, around how dispensaries can, provide cannabis as, yeah. Sure.
What about denios? I keep hearing farmers market, agriculture, stuff like that. You guys, they won't let us sesh at these open events or whatever, but Denios is a farmer's market. Why can't we just do it? I mean, it's agricultural, right? It's farmers.
Yeah, go to Roseville.
But what
I heard it's legal over there.
What about a farmer's market in Sacramento? I mean,
yeah, it's so retail. Yeah, I mean, so retail can only take place. I mean, again, we really need changes in state laws. So cultivators, really everything has to flow through a distributor. And that distributor can also be owned by a cultivation facility, but it ultimately has to flow through a distributor. So it has to go from a cultivator to a distributor to a retailer, right? And that is how our current cannabis structure is set up. The farmers market that you have under the freeway, and if you haven't been under the one under the freeway on Sunday mornings, I highly recommend it. It's awesome. Go say hi to Dan. But like that sort of direct to consumer farmer to consumer doesn't exist yet within our regulatory scheme. So we need a change in that regulatory scheme in order for those types of sales to take place.
Hi there. How are you doing? I really wanted to thank you and your whole team for having these events, because if you've ever emailed the BOCC or the CFDA and gotten an email back that says no answer, it's difficult to try to navigate the water. So I have a couple cultivations in the Bay Area, so I'm not as familiar with Sacramento, but I live here, and I'm somewhat thinking about a delivery only, and I've looked at several locations in Del Paso Heights, right? Everyone's trying to sell their properties. But I heard today this whole Power In Alliance, and is there anything that I can go to learn about Del Paso Heights and what's happening there, if there's some sort of alliance there?
There's a Del Paso Property Business Improvement District. However, the ordinances that we are looking at that affect Del Paso and Del Paso Boulevard are really geared towards encouraging storefront activity. So the
Right,
council members' concern are really that a cultivation facility doesn't come in and open up on store frontage and it's just going to be a box with no windows and nobody coming in and out. So that type of activity along Arden and Del Paso that doesn't have a storefront activity is going to be challenging, if not just outright not possible.
Okay. I mean, I obviously don't want to invest in a property and it's going to be an issue. So, thank you.
Hi, my name is Brian. I'm sorry if this is the wrong place for these questions, but it's the only place I can
No,
go to.
it's you're good.
So myself and another handful of professional registered California engineers design, develop, and manufacture extraction equipment, distillate, and CO2. I do have some questions regarding the new California Fire Code that will be effective July 1st. And just three general questions on that. The first one is there are subcategories that you can do to actually have and use these equipment. One is having a UL certified piece of equipment, which really doesn't make sense for a majority of these devices. The second is having a registered professional engineer that can sign off on this equipment with the right metrics and data. My first question is how can myself and the other engineers get approved for this process? Secondly, there is in my experience, my very short experience in a year or so, I've seen a lot of equipment and a lot of companies that sell equipment under the disguise of being UL listed for the customer when in actuality they're not. And so my second question is, what is the process and what does the city of Sacramento do in order to protect the customer so they don't fall in spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on equipment that won't be able to be used? And third, as a manufacturer, we are really responsible for the customer and the safety of the customer to use that device. And in more formal and regulated industries, we have auditing type of agencies that come in and make sure that they're being calibrated and things like that to ensure that they're not going to blow up in the case of like CO2 or butane or anything like that. So is there a plan to actually have some sort of regulated agency going forward on an annual basis or anything like that to not only protect the manufacturer but also the customer?
Yeah, so it's called, in Sacramento, it's the fire department. So I don't know if there's another level of like authorization or certification that one needs to construct this equipment. Our fire marshal, and I wish he was here. Yep, thank you. Come on down. But while he's coming up here, so I think the first preference is it'd be UL listed. Not all this equipment certainly is, and certainly some is being marketed as UL listed. In fact, when like a piece of it is UL listed, that's problematic. Every manufacturer has to submit their drawings and their schematics to this guy.
From my understanding with Chapter 38 and the peer review that's subsequently required by both the engineer and then further reviewed by the fire protection engineer is that they're going to go and ensure that the best materials for the processes are utilized, and then it's my job when I go out into the field and manufacturing facilities to make sure that everything is in place as it should be. Going forward, to hit the third question, I think, before I double back on the second, is the Sacramento Fire Department is going to conduct an annual inspection of all cannabis-related facilities within our jurisdiction. So going forward, we'll be making sure that, for lack of better terms, non-approved or non-standardized equipment hasn't been changed out, hasn't been utilized to replace a faulty component, things like that. To the comment on the UL or FM third-party listings, that's something to take up with those standardization or listing companies. It's an expensive process, and I invite you to discuss it with UL or FN. It's a completely separate process than what Chapter 38 allows in the fire code.
Do you foresee a chokehold as you being the sole final approval on an annual basis for all these companies that are going to be coming forward?
Define chokehold.
Stopping a company from operating because you don't have the time to inspect the equipment.
There are actually 3.5 of us that conduct the cannabis inspections on an annual basis. For right now, we're doing it as quickly as we can. I don't anticipate any issues or any, for lack of a better term, a chokehold, to use your term, to eliminate the actual operation of a business.
And one last question.
Yeah.
How do we get a hold of you or set up a meeting with
See me offline, I'll give you my card.
Excellent, thank you.
Almost escaped.
Quick question, is Freon being allowed as a solvent?
Salt, that's a volatile component under what I reviewed from the state regulation on that. It would not be allowed. However, I don't know if you're just using Freon by itself or you're going to be using it with something else. That's something for an engineer or somebody else to take a look at, and they're the ones who are going to deem, for lack of better terms, the solvent, the volatility of that material. But as it stands right now, it's volatile.
Thank you.
Question over here that's kind of, yes. Go right ahead.
Thank you. Kimberly Cargile here. So I have a few ideas about the sessions. I think that a lot of people here today really care about the sessions and want to figure out how to make them legal. And so first of all, just as deliveries weren't legal last year on the state level, sessions aren't at this time. So I have two ideas. One is to get everyone together so we could advocate on the state level, and I'd be happy to come and kind of walk everyone through how that works and how we could actually change the law, because Joe, bless his heart, cannot do anything about this, right? So he's here to kind of give us information about what's now legal. And then I have this other crazy idea. I don't know if it would work or not. What if the sesh itself, this is a question for you, got a license at CalExpo, and then could delivery companies be the vendors at the sesh at CalExpo? Currently, as the law is today. Or with a little tweak on the city level, not on the state level. Just changing state law is very difficult, but doable and can be done. Don't give up.
I think that's all maybe possible up to the delivery to CalExpo, because CalExpo is state property.
Okay, so part B of that question then, if the sesh also had a non-storefront retail license, then could sales happen at that?
No, so anyone that has a
Manufacturing and distribution license for their own company?
what you're talking about is like micro business at this point.
Ah, okay, okay.
So non-storefront delivery is not going to have a public interface or interaction or public window or non-employees on site. So delivery is only going to be allowed to have employees there.
So a micro business could potentially do this?
So a micro business has the potential, because it also has a dispensary component, to have on-site consumption if the city goes that route, and that is the conversation that I intend to have with the council, hopefully in summer.
Okay, thanks.
I got a couple questions for you because I've been listening now for so long, so I've been kind of typing stuff down. The first thing I want to bring up to you is the Prop 215, and it was commented that it's being phased out as of January, but it's interesting to me that my medical card was renewed past January, and the state then took the state $150 that they wanted for their state card and issued it again past that date. So if it's being phased out, it's kind of weird that the state would still be taking money and making money off of that program.
Well, hold on. So it is being phased out, and there are other administrative privileges that come with having a card. So
Taxes, I understand that you're excluded
taxes
from
and possession. So yeah, they're gonna keep taking that
You actually do miss out on some taxes if you get your state card, but that's knowledge that not a lot of people have, and I'm willing to share that and where to get your state card so you can take advantage of that tax discount. But the other thing I want to talk about is, the Sacramento has always pushed that it's farm to fork. It's basically supposed to be where we're coming from a small business and then we're introducing our business into the public. And with Prop 215, it's always been a possibility for that. And with it being phased out, we touched on a couple things, but then really didn't get a clarified answer. He asked, are we able to consume at a private residence? It never really was answered yes or no.
Yeah.
It is, yes. Okay, so that's our loophole then through the next few months, is having it at a private. I'm reiterating at this point because it seems like no one really understands that this question has been answered. It's that we need to do it on a private, it needs to be a private residence, and we need to be having a private event at that point. I'm just wondering, is there any permits that we're going to run into that we're going to need if we are going that route with this? Because we're going to look for the loophole no matter what. So I'm just looking for looking for the closest way out for you. I want to work with you guys.
Yeah, it's like alcohol at this point, right? So I can sit at home and I can drink a beer, and I can sit at home and ingest cannabis, and I can have friends over. At some point at my Kager party, the cops are going to show up and there's a problem, and it's no different than cannabis, right? So when the cops show up and there's 100 people at your house, there's going to be a problem, right?
But there shouldn't be if we're all Prop 215 patients who can prove that at the door when they arrive, correct?
Well, you still can't be a nuisance to your neighbors.
Oh, so again, it's going to be then derived by what the neighbors are going to be putting out as far as the complaints and everything. So that makes sense. I won't go any farther on that. The other thing I want to comment on is you made a comment that we need to be directing more information to the state about how we want to change Prop 64. I want to reiterate to you that this is the connection that I have with my city council, which I would think has a more of a connection than what I'm going to have with the state. And it's going to have more of an influence when you go to them and you say, hey, I've got 50 people in front of me that every time I do one of these meetings stands up and says the same damn thing to me every time. And the other thing that I want to touch base with on that is the Prop 64 is set up really weird. You mentioned 8 plants, but then we can only possess 1 ounce, or 6 plants, but only can possess 1 ounce. What kind of plants do you think that we're growing? This is not a dandelion. We're going to get more than 1 ounce off of 6 plants. I mean, that's just a given. So we're allowed to grow a certain amount, but then not allowed to possess what comes off that plant. So again, I'm not trying to beat you up on this. I'm trying to kind of educate you a little bit.
Okay, can we have one person speaking at a time, please? It's getting very noisy in here.
Thank you. I'm just trying to bring it up to you so that when you go back to the lawmakers that you have a personal relationship with the state, you have kind of a little bit more knowledge to say, hey, this from the start is way off because 6 plants does not equal 1 ounce nor 8 grams of concentrates. Yeah. So I mean, we're drawing it's a slim line there, And again, I just want to touch base with that a little bit with you because
okay, I understand. So I understand. I think I understand the gist of your point. I'll tell you this: having done public policy for almost 20 years now, it's always imperfect. And the law of intended consequences is alive and well. And I didn't have anything to do with the drafting of Prop 64, but by a show of hands, who's been cited for possession in excess of 1 ounce from the 6 plants that they grew in their home?
Well, it's because
hold on, anybody? Right, because there's a reasonableness standard also applied to the law.
Sure.
Right.
Okay.
And so no one's kicking down your door and be like, hey, you've got 4 ounces here and you can only be in possession of 1. And it's just
we haven't got to that point yet because we just now are getting this info where we have to register with the state even to grow those 6 plants. So again, this is going to be new, and I'm just trying to bring it up so that, again, when you have these meetings with these other people, you can look more educated because you have all of us standing behind you.
And
I appreciate what you're doing.
And I do.
Don't take that the wrong way.
And I do. I mean, this is how we ended up with, I will take at least partial credit for how we ended up with the shared facilities license.
Sure.
I was very vocal with Department of Public Health early on and roped some other cities into it. And
now, when it comes to social cannabis, you discussed kind of comparing dispensaries to liquor stores. Well, then that means we're comparing weed to alcohol. And when it comes to consumption, I know it's not anything that we can change here, but there obviously is something going on inside of other cities that's allowing people in public to join up and partake in a joint or a bowl or a bong load together while they're in public. Now, I'm curious, because obviously these guys it's a one in a few kind of thing, but they've been operating for more than more than a year now. I mean, it's been something where I'm watching the social media, I'm watching it on the
Okay,
news.
I'm going to stop you right there, please. We are coming down to our last 15 minutes. Can we do a couple follow-up questions? And
Yeah.
Sure, no
there's
problem.
other people out here who need questions answered.
Sure, no problem. So I guess my last question to you then real quick would be, we talk about, again, alcohol versus weed. What about a brewery that gives samples? Is there going to be any type of license where you're going to be able to be a manufacturer and then offer a walk-up to bar to try my product?
I think the state is evaluating kind of how to handle samples currently.
And again, I
expect that to potentially be addressed in their draft regs or their final regs that come out in sometime in the summer.
I appreciate you handling the questions. Thank you.
Hi, Joe. What happens to the CUPs that are already approved in the Power and Alliance area?
Nothing.
Nothing. They're good. Keep going. They're not in jeopardy at all. Okay. And then the other question is, do you have any prediction on the High Times vote tomorrow?
We've got an office pool if you want in on it.
Maybe.
No, I don't make predictions. It's a council. It's going to be a council discussion tomorrow evening. I don't believe that it's going to be unanimous either way. I mean, it's the first time that we've had the public consumption debate, and it was one that I wanted to have as part of a larger conversation. But I was kind of CalExpo and the High Times event kind of cut in line on me, if you will, and their planning precipitated this discussion. I wanted to have it to be a little bit larger and talk about our dispensaries and on-site consumption and micro businesses and that like. But so we're looking at just the High Times event at CalExpo tomorrow. But your guess is as good as mine.
Okay. Are you going to be presenting?
Not unless you want to.
No.
This question was probably already answered at the previous meetings, but I'm just looking for a clarification.
It's okay. Every question has been answered at the previous meeting.
So, if you have a delivery-only dispensary, you're only allowed to operate within the city. Like, you can't operate in like unincorporated areas like Arden or Rancho Cordova, or at the city, or at another city. But like,
Again,
say, can you deliver to Citrus Heights or to South Sac?
So I am not here to provide legal advice. Here's my understanding of state law. Delivery companies, I'll just say a legally permitted delivery company inside of the city of Sacramento, which is the only place that they really can be around here. I think Davis does delivery, did they? But maybe Davis. Nothing in state law prohibits you to deliver through Carmichael or through Citrus Heights or through Roseville. The only potential time where it becomes problematic is if, I'll just say Roseville, for example, if they have a ban on delivery and they are explicit about their ban and their prohibition of the delivery of cannabis into their city. Otherwise, if they're silent on it, you can deliver into those locations, you can pass through those locations, you just need to operate out of the city. But you should definitely consult your attorney.
I was wondering about the collective cup cap that you were talking about earlier. You said you had 30 in 2000 and 2008. Why haven't you added to that cap since then?
Wait, have we not?
Yeah.
Was not the will of the council.
So in order to change that cap, what steps need to be taken?
Council, I'm going to be coming back at some point with the discussion. Council's already asked for that to come back, the potentially adding new storefront dispensaries. So we're going to come back with that discussion.
Not only just the storefronts, but
well, that's the only one we have a
these,
cap on.
These sessions or whatever. If you have them at a location that is approved, Why can't you just add in another 5 or even a couple permits to that cap? Just like in summer, we have cooling centers. Why not have medication centers? Instead of oversaturation, we have far too much undersaturation of places that we can medicate.
Yeah. So, again, it would have to take place at a licensed dispensary. So we are going to be having that conversation. Probably end of summer, more like fall.
Hello. My name is Elijah with Source Botanicals. And I kind of live off the sessions. But I want to know, we keep talking about them and they, and who we need to talk to about getting this and that done. Like, when do we have one of these with all of us here and talking to them and they, and who can actually, answer questions? No disrespect, but you repeatedly say that's something I can't answer, something I can't tell you. When do we talk to the people that can tell us what we need to know, and get in front of their face, It's like...
So every Tuesday night at 5 o'clock, the mayor and city council meet. I mean, that's the board of directors for the city.
That's where stuff get wrote.
But you were seeking changes in state law, right? So
that's the capital of the state, right?
Right, but we were in City Hall, so the state capitol is 4 blocks that way, and so. Well, yeah, you need to be a licensed dispensary, operate out of a appropriate zone location, and be approved for on-site consumption. So the on-site consumption piece and the addition of new storefronts, those are 2 conversations that just haven't happened yet. And so again, it was my intention to have this conversation sooner rather than later. I was just kind of cut off by the Cal Expo event and needed to get this one. So this is our first part of the on-site consumption conversation, and then we're going to be coming back to the policy committee and the council as a whole to talk about on-site consumption and possibly adding new storefront dispensaries.
And as far as the Cal Expo thing, we've given our city, the state, whatever, has given all the power to Cal Expo to facilitate these events or whatever. But they also given them all the power to say how much it's going to cost to facilitate these events. But that's that leave us they're not about to rent out the Cal Expo for $2,500 for a night. That's too small of a bill for them. That's not going to happen. What type of
I'm happy to facilitate the conversation with Cal Expo. I think it's because of state law and its current limitations. I think it's absolutely a worthy one of what is a reasonable scale to which one can host an event at Cal Expo.
And then one more. So y'all said we could do the private events or whatever, and facilitate whatever with our people privately. What's going to stop the police from just coming and badgering us every night? And we legal. We legal up until the police show up at the door saying everybody needs to go home. Y'all illegal right now. I don't understand. Everything's kind of wrote in circles. You could apply for this license, but we're not giving out these licenses yet. You could apply for this.
Okay,
business.
sir. Sorry, we're down to 2 minutes. Are there any other questions that pertain to the City of Sacramento regulations?
I'm talking about the City of Sacramento.
Yeah.
That's where I live. That's where.
You're talking about the state regulations.
I'm talking about the city I live in. California's a state.
It's okay, Christine. It's okay. Stop. It's okay. Stop. Hey, are there any other questions?
Yeah. Hey, Joe.
Hold on, we can talk later. I'm not going anywhere.
Hey, I just had a quick question. I'd come up to you after. We're looking to bring in non-volatile alcohol extraction. I just wanted to verify, make my understanding is correct, that with our current CUP that's applied for, when we get that for cultivation, that covers the production, file for a separate BOP, and then follow through with the police department and planning. And there's nothing new that's come up
Yeah, just go through, make sure that you've informed, you need to inform the planning department that you intend to do manufacturing. Right, so depending on when you applied, you may have applied for a cultivation permit, and you may want to amend that to be a production CUP. They're now one and the same. You couldn't get a cultivation CUP if you wanted right now, because they don't exist.
So if we applied when it was cultivation, go forward and let Matt, our planner, know.
Yeah, and you want to make sure that you want to let them know in advance that you plan to do manufacturing and give them a floor plan.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Joe. Heather from Attorney Dale Schaefer's office. My question pertains to tomorrow's City Council meeting. And is it only going to be the topic of the High Times event, or are they going to talk about on-site consumption as a general?
It is
discussion?
the High Time, to be more specific, it is the High Times event on May 4th and 5th.
So no.
It's not about on-site consumption at Cal Expo in perpetuity. It is
My
about
question
this singular
actually was
event.
more about, since one of the options that you had discussed was dispensaries, and I know that in Oakland, Magnolia Dispensary is doing the fair or the farmers markets, like you were talking about, where the manufacturers and cultivators can come and set up a booth, not sell. But if they're contracted with Magnolia, they can go and purchase their products inside of the dispensary, but learn about those products. And I was wondering if anybody had approached you, any of the dispensaries had approached you about doing something like that as an on-site consumption and learning about the products events, and if that was ever going to be discussed, or if we needed to do something to put it on the agenda for a future city council meeting.
I don't think that there's an issue with representatives attending or kind of representatives, showing up at a dispensary and kind of marketing their products, as long as they're not, selling them.
It's more of the on-site consumption portion of that.
Right, and that, again, that conversation is going to be happening later in the year with the mayor and council.
One quick question for the meeting on May 8th. Is that here, or do you know the location of that meeting?
May 8th is going to be here for the Law and Ledge Committee.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be here at 3 o'clock.
Okay. And then the one thing I just kind of actually want to say to the room is, if the city council does approve consumption for this event, please do your due diligence to make sure that whoever you come with doesn't blow it. This is a big, big leap of faith, I think, on the city council's part, and it has to go well. Just want to put that out there.
High times.
You should care about the Cal Expo facility and the city council allowing future events. That's what you should care about. It's okay. You don't understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Just be careful.
I think what she's saying is, if that event doesn't go well, the chances of having on-site consumption permitted in other places is going to be reduced, if I implied it.
Okay, just a quick question about what is county and what is, what is city and what is state responsibility? Because all over the state of California, in every major city, there are sessions and events going on. And as far as I know, and I'm very close to this, Sacramento is the only one that's actively going after and closing down the sessions. So couldn't this be done with a city ordinance? Couldn't we do a city ordinance for local events?
No, because we're preempted.
Like Oakland did?
Oakland's on-site.
Sacramento is preempted?
If Oakland has legal on-site consumption, it's taking place at a dispensary or at the fairground.
They also have Measure Z, which has had dispensaries for over a year, which was against state law.
Yeah.
But they do it with city ordinance, and I don't understand why Sacramento.
Because we're constitutionally preempted.
But they're not? We're
No,
the only city that's
they,
constitutionally, I don't understand.
every city is constitutionally preempted by the state. And so Oakland does not have legal on-site consumption that takes place outside of a dispensary or a fairground.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do.
It's not legally with the state.
But
It's not legal. It's not legal within the
Sacramento
state.
is actively going after shutting sessions down, and I don't understand why. I guess it's from your office that's doing that. Why are you?
Joe stays after and talks to everybody. By all means, I'm just going to take the microphone away because it's going to die. Thank you.
I collectively maybe hire an attorney, present your legal arguments. I mean, I'm telling you. It's that fucking pesky Constitution.
Prop 64, so we get it.
It's.
As far as the light rail station.
Yeah. Hold on. I sent Joy an email about this. Let me look for it really quickly.